Greetings of peace and welcome. My name is Anthea Alexander, and I'm joined this evening by my distinguished colleagues and friends. So basically, we gather. I always think of wedding ceremonies when I say that word, gather together on Friday evenings to discuss topics of interest to us and topics that we would hope would be of interest to other people, topics of relevance to everyday life. And this collaboration came as a result of meeting Yogi Sanjiva, who is our dear friend. He's missing tonight. He has other commitments. So we've decided to go ahead without him, which I think is very brave. And but we can certainly get his opinion on our topic of discussion tonight, which is stress management. So we've been having these conversations on and off for probably about 18 months to 2 years, and it came about as a collaboration initially between myself and Yogi Sanji, or Sanji as we lovingly and affectionately call him. And then we've gathered Rae and then Georgie and Michael, and it's amazing to have different people with different experience and different ways of thinking, different mindsets, different, different everything. It's amazing to have different perspectives on these beautiful topics and our discussions. Basically, people are welcome to join us live. If you're wanting to join us live, just reach out to one of us and we can share the link. Alternatively, if you're wanting to watch the video in the future as a replay, that's more than welcome as well. And we also welcome any suggestions for topics. And we basically are happy to discuss anything as long as it's discussed respectfully. So that's what I wanted to say. A little bit more about me. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I work as a coach and mentor, and I coach women and anyone, but specialize in women on becoming sovereign in their areas of their life, including physically, mentally, and also financially. I also have special interests in meditation and emotional mentoring, as well as the unseen realms, which we have discussed at length over the past few weeks. So if you're interested in the unseen realms, please go back and have a look at the replays of some of our discussion, which was really, really fascinating and thought-provoking. Okay, so what I will do now is I will hand over the mic hand the baton over to Rae, and then Rae can introduce herself and perhaps talk a little bit about what she does and her experience, and then we'll make it around to Georgie and to Michael, and then we can start our discussion of our topic of stress management for this evening. Over to you, Rae.
Thanks, Anthea. Thanks, everybody, for coming and for inviting me again. I love these Friday evening get-togethers. It's really cool. So my name's Rae. I am in far north Queensland, Australia, in this little rural town called Atherton on the Atherton Tablelands, which is, don't tell anyone, the most beautiful place in the world. And I've spent most of my life in the nursing profession as a registered nurse, and I have worked in everywhere. I'm a midwife, and I've done lots of critical care, emergency department, intensive care, palliative care, everything. Done everything for a long time, but I eased myself out of that profession, and I've now taken up pottery full time. So I'm a ceramic artist, and because of my background, I make pottery for the funeral industry. So I deal with people in grief a lot, which is really natural for me. So it was a natural extension for, and a niche and something that I was very comfortable with. So that's what I do all day. My alarm clock is in the bin, and I'm a very happy camper in my life. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. What about you, Georgie?
Hi, I'm Georgina Campbell. I'm from far north Queensland. I live in Mareeba. Um, I'm a spinal flow practitioner. A few more, jack of all trades, master of none. Um, but um, yeah, and doing getting my business back on track and working on myself, my healing myself, and I'm originally off a cattle property further northwest of Mareeba. Um, I have three beautiful daughters. They're all two oldest ones are married. The youngest one is newly married. And yeah, I just in the process of yeah, getting off crutches and working on myself. Yeah, that's about me at the moment. Michael?
Thanks, Georgie. m- uh, I'm now based in the lovely Northern Rivers of New South Wales, just south of Tweed Heads. And I've been here nigh on 10 years now. In my day job, I work predominantly with students of English as a second language. Um, and that's a job that I find really rewarding and very fulfilling and enjoyable. Um, and when I'm not in a work environment, I tend to gravitate to many of these sort of areas of interest that we discuss here on a Friday evening. So everything ranging from physical and mental health to self-actualization and spirituality, um, and ways of finding, I suppose, our place or my place, in the world, as well as in the community in which I live. Um, So I really look forward to these conversations on a Friday evening. Um, I've I Sanji was the first member of the group whom I met. It would have been probably 4 or 5 years ago now, quite a while ago. Um, and it was Sanji who introduced me to this lovely group of people. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I always look forward to getting other people's perspectives on the sorts of topics that we discuss. And I know that tonight's topic is quite a broad one. So I'm sure there's plenty of scope for discussion and different points of view there too. So normally, this is where I would hand over to Sanji to introduce himself, but in his absence, um, would anybody, when we were trying to work out a topic for tonight's discussion, I thought that in light of the other topics that we've covered in previous weeks, that stress management might be a good one. It is a broad one, a very general one. Um, so there are different kinds of stresses that I know I have to deal with in my life, but I must admit, when Rae was giving the rundown of all the different aspects of healthcare that she's been involved in throughout her long career as a nurse, it made me think. Um, I should be asking her for tips in how to cope with high pressure, high stress environments when you're dealing with yeah, patients and families that are dealing with physical stresses, mental stresses, emotions like grief and loss. Um, but having said that, stress is very much a universal experience. It's part of the human condition. So it's something we all have to deal with. Um, in terms of stress and stress management, I might hand it back to Anthea. Um, what do you think about this topic in general? And what are you interested in maybe learning more about or discussing? Or sometimes it's just interesting to compare notes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say about stress management.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, Rae and Georgie, for sharing about yourselves and your current uh, situations and also what you've done in the past. It's always really valuable to hear from other people and their stories. I love hearing people's stories. So this topic, I think it's a great topic. I think it's very relevant, and it's relevant. It's like a lifelong topic. Some topics I think are more relevant in certain phases of life, or perhaps for certain types of people with certain types of careers or family roles. But this topic, yeah, I think it cuts across the board for everybody. So when I think of stress management, I think first of all about stress, and I'll really love to hear everybody else's opinions and thoughts about stress. So I think of acute stress, which is something that we need to survive. So from a basically uh, like a tribal point of view, from a survival point of view, we've been hardwired to respond to stress so that if a tiger jumps out of the jungle or something happens, we can respond and our nervous system can go and do its thing, and it's going into its mode of fleeing or staying and fighting, or they talk now about another one, which is freezing. So that is something that we all hopefully have. I don't know about people that don't have that capability, but I'd love to hear if there are people that don't have it. And we need that. So that's a good stress. That's a good stress. However, my understanding is that stress can become uh, I won't say good and bad because I don't think that, it's that clear cut. It's more about stress can become challenging when it's an ongoing chronic stress. So that could happen if someone has an illness or perhaps a career that's very stressful. They are two situations that I've dealt with myself, and I'm certainly happy to talk a little bit more about, unpack that a bit more as we get into the discussion. Uh, but yeah, and that's where our cortisol levels elevate, and then it basically creates responses in our body. And Rae can probably talk to this a bit more, like medically, but that continue to go on when they're not really needed, and then it can create a bit of havoc in our bodies. And I've certainly experienced that in terms of a very stressful career following stressful personal circumstances. So certainly personal circumstances can create stress as well. And then having longer term stress, which, yeah, wreaks havoc, causing insomnia, anxiety, other symptoms that aren't exactly desirable, but are giving us a message about what's going on. So they are playing a helpful role in their own way. So what I also wanted to talk about, and I probably won't talk about it so much now, but as we continue with the discussion, we can talk about it, are protective factors. So ways of perhaps designing our lives so that we can manage stress. So it's about really identifying that we have stress, we potentially are in a position where we are going to experience chronic stress through whatever our life circumstances are. And it's about managing that stress. So I've written a list of protective factors, which I would love to discuss later, and definitely get the opinions and experience of the three of you beautiful people. So what I'll do now is I'll hand it over to Rae, and I'll love to hear about her thoughts about stress and chronic stress from her point of view. So over to you, Rae.
Thanks, Anthea. I kind of had my thoughts divided into two piles of stress, like everyday ongoing stress, and stress reactions to immediate things. So something bad happens and then you have to cope with that over the days or weeks. So because in my head I was talking about stress management. So how I manage day-to-day stress is different from like an acute thing on top of it. And before I forget, you were talking about stress response not being good for us. And it's because the stress response goes straight to your primitive brain, right? So it's your primitive brain that's trying to keep you alive, which worked really well when we were being hunted by, I want to say T-Rexes. I know we probably weren't, but saber-toothed cats. And it doesn't suit as well in the modern times. And so you get a raised cortisol level. And as soon as you stress your body continuously, it thinks it's in famine. So it starts to store fat and it starts to shut things down that aren't necessary. And so it's one of the reasons we have an obesity problem in the world today, because people have chronic levels of stress that just never go down. So your body's trying to keep you alive in a life and death situation all the time. Yeah, okay. Well, it's all I can remember about that now, because I've kind of switched mine off a bit. So if I just go back then and talk about how in the nursing profession, because I know Michael's interested, how I used to cope with all those horrific things that I've seen. And I've seen people at their very best and at their very worst in hospital, and not much in the middle, really, and pretty horrible things. And the horrible things that families would do to the people in hospital. Because my point of view is always for the patient. Nurses advocate for their patients. That's what we did, to our own detriment. Because in my day, we were taught that patient comes first. Your judgment is irrelevant. Our state of being was irrelevant. Didn't matter whether we were hungry, tired, angry. You turned up for work. You put yourself aside and you did everything for your patient. So that's my point of view all the time when looking after patients. So day to day, how we cope with nursing day to day. So to dull our emotions, we all smoked. I smoked like a chimney. I took it up when I was 18 because I thought it was cool, but also to deal with, at 18, I'd never even seen a naked bottom before, and there's all these 90-year-old naked bottoms, which are a real shock to your system when you're just out of school, and let alone the death and diarrhea and everything else in between was, so not good, but we did it. Most of us smoked, a lot of people drank. So when we had days off, they partied hard. I was never big into that. I tried to be, but I just didn't like it. So it wasn't me, the alcohol stuff, but certainly smoked. We talked to each other constantly. It was all about the team. The better the team, the better you got on, the less stress you had, no matter what you were dealing with. So, statistics show that people don't leave their jobs because of the actual work. They leave because of the team around them. So That's so true. If you've got a good team, you can clear sewage, septic tanks all day and have a wonderful time, you know? Yeah, so we during work and especially after work, we all lived in the nurses' quarters. We would chat after every shift and just decompress and debrief with each other. And we all knew every difficult patient in that whole hospital. There were 500 patients. And in the nurses' quarters, how many nurses on my floor? Would have been 40 nurses on my floor, and we'd all meet in the communal lounge where there was the kitchen and the TV, and we would talk about our shift. So we all knew what everybody was dealing with. So we all knew all the bad stuff. The hospital grapevine's like nothing on earth. It's like instant pudding. Something happens in the emergency department, everyone knows within 5 minutes. Probably I think it was from the wardies. The wardies would go between wards and just let us all know because they were debriefing as well. So yeah, talk to each other a lot. What else we did? We had a swimming pool. It was smart when they built those quarters. There was a pool. We were in the pool a lot. I used to get under the water a lot, so there was no sound. Oh, that really helped me because I being a little country kid, really, had a great childhood and I was very sheltered. It was very overwhelming. Just living in the city was overwhelming, let alone all the patients we had to deal with. So I'd get under the water. That really helped me a lot. Chatting to colleagues. What else? Once we got a bit older, having pets really helped. You could cuddle your pets. If you had kids, if you had a really awful shift, you just go home and cuddle your kids at night. It puts everything back in a perspective. You might have lost a child on a shift, and it just makes yours just so much more precious and your whole family. I used to visit my family a lot, even though they were in another town. Like in those days, it was an hour and 10 minutes I could get home the range because there were no speed limits then, and I had a little Datsun 200B that could hug the corners like anything. Yeah, and a record to break every time I went up and down the road. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Okay, that's driving fast. No, don't do that. Yeah, so spending time with my family. Some people used to write in their diary. We didn't have journals. I mean, that's what they were, but we called them diaries. They'd write stuff in their diaries. I tried to do that, but when I read it back, it just looked like it was terrible. Couldn't stand what I'd written. So that didn't work for me. And the biggest thing for me, because I get so overwhelmed with things, is alone time. Yeah, so that was fine in the quarters. You could just lock yourself in your room and just be all by yourself. And that I could heal. I healed whatever emotional trauma I had. Sometimes you'd be bawling in your room. You might cry all night, cried all night a few times after some heavy shifts. Sometimes after losing a patient that you're particularly close with, which you tried not to do, you tried not to get attached to them. But usually if I'd made a mistake or someone had yelled at me, that's when I'd be crying about, I'm not good enough. Anyway, yeah, so yeah, that happened. Well, because we did our training, we were in the classroom one day a week, and the rest of the time we're in the coalfields, in the fire and the brimstone, and wow. So you've learned on the go and teaching hospital and lots of young'uns, and yeah, you just had to learn real fast on the go. So yeah, so that's how we handled the day-to-day stuff, and trying to get enough sleep, which we didn't do as young'uns when we were in our teens and early 20s, because we were partying hard in between shifts and going out, and we did that a lot. Dancing really helped. Music, dancing with other people that weren't health professionals, that kind of balanced things out. Yeah. Once I got a little bit older, in my mid-20s, I was living in a house. I got my first house, and I used to. It's so terrible. My mum used to say to me, "You don't have any hobbies. All you do is work." How come? And I thought, why is it? You know why? Because I didn't have the strength to do anything else. I spent my whole downtime getting ready for the next shift, making sure I caught up on my sleep. And I used to try and store sleep. I'd sleep all day before my first night shift. One of my ICU friends said, "You know, you can't store sleep." And I thought, yes, you bloody can. Yes, you can. So I just didn't have the strength for anything else. And then on top of that, something bad would happen. Like for me, the bad things were, oh, I lost my job somewhere along the line. That was pretty awful. But marriage breakups and awful things like that. So I had a whole other set of coping things I put on top of what I was doing every day. I continued to smoke. But I would, if I had something that kept replaying over and over in my head, I'd write it on a post-it note, whatever it is, whatever I was worried about. I can't think of anything now. Can I? Oh, oh, you made a big mistake. You're a terrible nurse. And then I'd screw it up and throw it in the bin. So that, like, trying to put that into my subconscious, like that is not wanted. Let it go. I used to go to a kinesiologist who would ask your body with muscle testing what was going on, what blocks you needed to let go. They'd go for emotional blocks. It was amazing. So I did that about every couple of months, and that really helped. Walking in nature, if you had the strength to walk in nature, going fishing for me, love that. Being on the water. See, water is a very stress relieving thing for me. Yeah, after a marriage breakup, the only way I could finalize that marriage was to get my wedding ring. I put it on the bonnet of a rusted out car that we had on the farm, just rubbish car, just a shell of a car, and took a sledgehammer and bashed the crap out of it until it was just a little ball of mushed up gold. That really helped. So physically bashing. So I taught my children to do that when they threw tantrums. Georgie's laughing at me. I did. When my kids had tantrums, I would give them a rolled up newspaper and tell them to bash the lounge to try and, yeah, and acknowledge their anger and say, here you go, put it to good use. Do something physical to get it out. Yeah, what else? Alone time. What else have I got? There's probably other things that I can't quite think of right this minute, but I wanted to just end my little bit now by saying I don't do any of those things now. I've got something new, but I'll tell you that next round, something that works better than everything. Yeah. So what about you, Georgie? How do you cope with stress?
Well, I fully understand because when I left school, I was a domestic at the old people's home here in Mariba, but I wasn't the nurse. So, like, my first dead person was very stressful for me at the age of, I think I was only like 16 because I only went to grade 10. And then I got a full-time job there. And I used to smoke and drink. We'd go out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we'd have to be at work by 5 a.m. on every other morning. 'Cause I think we used to work, we'd have every second weekend off, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think we used to work, yeah, 10 days and have 4 off or something. But I can't remember with myself is different because what happened was I got to 40 and I'm like, what is all this stress they tell you about? Like, I don't get stressed. But what happened with me is I used to smoke and drink it away, but I didn't realize that. But what other happened to me is that my body took it on. So when I got to 40, that's when I started declining, like in my health. Even though that I was like eating pretty reasonable, and everything, but um my body started to take it on. But after I think the first and it was much after my last uh or my marriage breakup, that's where it started to happen and I started to realize, and I went on my spiritual journey, started to, but I didn't know how to do it. But it started when I was about 45. And pretty much, first of all, I think I started, I started drinking really lots. That got rid of it really bad. Not. But um I think meditation is the first, like, because then the last 10 years I have done childcare as well. So, and that was very stressful. So the first thing I started with was meditation, but I wasn't eating properly. So, but the meditation helped and it used to put me back in balance. But when I started eating properly, meditation and drinking drinking lots of water and sunshine and that is a real, yeah. I did have a few things written down. Um and caffeine. Giving up caffeine, um and the dairy and eating, balanced meals. Yeah. But having one coffee a day is what I do now. Like, but I try and not drink any more than that. And listening to music, having not upbeat music, but good vibe music. And in all too is writing writing journals, writing it down and ripping it up, because God help me if anyone found it. That's what I never ever used to do that, but I rip it up and wet it even and throw it in the bin so no one will ever find it. But that is really good as well. And I go to the park and spending time in nature. Yeah, that is really, but everyone is different too as well. And I've found that you really gotta, it takes I don't know, for me, it took a while to like listen to my body as well of what you need and what you have to do. So, it's this just didn't happen overnight. My eating habits, my meditation, or listening to my body. Like, and if I got real stressed now, like I sit in a chair and I just concentrate on my breathing, and that sort of brings me back into balance as well. But it just depends what you need at the time and what stress is happening and everything. Yeah. Mm. And oh, what? Oh, the biggest one is learn to say no. When I found another thing too, that I've put boundaries, and that has stopped a lot of my stress. Learn to say no, when you don't want to do anything or something. And and spending me time. Yeah, spending me time, and or going and seeing, um, you know, go out and have coffee with a friend too as well, is really good. But it just listen to you what you need. I think that's about it. That's all I can remember at the moment. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, it's interesting that you one of the things that you touched on is listening to your body, and that's something that I still have trouble with. You would think that with more than 40 years of practice, I'd be better at listening to and correctly interpreting, the messages that I've received from my body. And that's something that I'm still working on. So it's something that I'm actually not very good at. In my case, a lot, but not all of my stress, but a lot of my stress comes from me getting caught up in my thoughts and feelings, and getting out of my head is a skill that I'm still learning. I wouldn't say that I'm good at it, but I'm certainly better than I was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Uh, because speaking personally, whether it's work-based stress or stress at home or stress in a relationship, um, I have a tendency to worry about things that haven't happened and ruminate on things that have happened. So, um, for me, a skill that I'm learning now is how can I get off this mental hamster wheel that I seem to be on, um where if I'm worried about a situation at work, um I might be worried about a situation with a particular student that I work with, that tendency to then play the events over and over in my mind, and to, lie in bed thinking about it when I should be getting good sleep, and those sorts of things are something that I still find quite difficult. So, uh, in terms of dealing with stress, I think a lot of the advice that's already been given is good advice. I know now that I have to look for ways to maybe I'm one of those people who has to make a conscious effort to maybe step away from my desk or go and walk outside on the grass, uh, or change my environment or do something physical. It might be as simple as, going for a 10 or 15-minute walk, um, in order to, yeah, just allow myself to process what's going on without ruminating too much. Um, and in terms of, because I always try and think of practical ways of doing it. Um, I wouldn't say, and this is where I think your suggestion, Georgie, of meditation is a really good one. Um, just anything that anchors our attention in the present moment is helpful for me. Um, whether you use the breath as your meditation object or some other object, it could be loving kindness meditation, or it could be a visualization. But anything that uh, breaks the cycle of rumination and repetitive thinking for me tends to be helpful. In terms of stress management techniques, there's an Australian doctor and therapist. His name's Russ Harris, and he wrote a book a few years ago called The Happiness Trap. And that's basically just a general introduction to acceptance and commitment therapy. And he's probably one of Australia's foremost practitioners of acceptance and commitment therapy. And he's written a series of books, Act with Love. The Happiness Trap is the most famous, probably, or most well known of the books that he's written. And he talks about different ways of getting through the emotional storm, which, and these days, in my own experience, sometimes when I'm going through a mentally challenging or stressful time, I try to tell myself that this is just, it's like a storm, or it's like a period of bad emotional weather and it will pass. And one of the things that Russ Harris talks about is finding an anchor in the storm and ways of dropping anchor. So anchors are anything that is here in the present moment that isn't part of that storm of stressful thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So it can be what you see, what you hear, what you touch, what you taste, what you smell, what you can smell, your body posture, your breathing, basically anything that helps you to stay present and stay grounded in the present moment, and that helps you stay in contact with where you are and what you're doing. So I find that approach has been helpful personally. And I'd also recommend, I always like to give maybe the name of a book or a resource or something so that if somebody's interested or they think, oh, I might check that out, they've got an additional resource. So I'd recommend Dr. Russ Harris and some of the principles of acceptance and commitment therapy. And I'd also come back to and really endorse what you said, Georgie, and Rae and Anthea. I'm not a good meditator. I don't meditate necessarily every day, but when I do, my stress levels are better managed. I cope better in general, and my almost every aspect of my life is in better balance than it otherwise would be. Um, so that's a really good idea. But there are different ways of, I think, mindfully doing something. You don't have to meditate with your eyes closed. You can do visualization, or there are other modalities and techniques that you can use that are helpful. So with that in mind, I might pass it back to Anthea. Are there any modalities or anything that you've found helpful, or what do you think?
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Rae and Georgie, for what you've shared as well. So I think that everything that's been covered is really, really helpful, and leaving people with a resource, Michael, I think is really very, very beneficial. So well done for taking that on as something that you are contributing to our conversation, our discussion. So, what I've written down in terms of protective factors or ways of managing stress for me and that I have also learned are beneficial across the board. First of all, speaking with trusted people or associations, so friends, workmates, it could be health professionals. You might need to speak with a counselor or a psychologist. It depends on the level of stress, how it's affecting you. Speaking with your friends, like Rae talked about, speaking with her nursing colleagues may be enough, but it may be something that you need to seek professional help with. So, but definitely talking to somebody else about it. Don't keep it to yourself. Meditation, yes, big ticks for meditation. And as Michael elaborated, meditation doesn't have to mean sitting down with your eyes closed in silence. It can be gardening. It can be anything that you do with your like mindfully that takes you out of your head. Again, as Michael talked about, it could be sewing. It could be doing crosswords. It could be listening to music. It's anything that basically you're doing and focusing your attention on and something that you enjoy. What I've also added is having purpose in your life. So, meaningful activities, whether that's work or study or volunteering or being on your own healing journey, projects in your life that are purposeful. Nutrition I've written down as well, and Georgie mentioned that. Nutrition, I think, is, well, actually, no, from my own experience, is key. And the better nutrition we have, the better, because we're basically fueling our body through nutrition. So the better nutrition we have, the better we function. Sleep, rest, and recovery. Mindsets, personal development can be very, very helpful. So listening to people who have information that is helpful to you, or reading books or watching YouTube videos about topics that you're interested in. It could be history, it could be geography, it could be travel, it could be whatever. Pets. So my list is basically just confirming what everybody else has said. So well done, everybody. What I've also suggested is not watching the news, or if you do need to follow the news, because some people do feel like they need to know what's going on, to do it through trustworthy sources that perhaps aren't fear-mongering and are really, giving you, a more balanced point of view. And then I've added some of the things that didn't have on my list, but crying, as Rae said, alone time. I hadn't written it down, but actually I was reflecting as Rae was speaking, and that's really, really important for me, being able to have alone time, process my emotions and thoughts, because when something happens, you might react, in a quick way, but then you need to sort of unpack it later and think about, why did I react in that way? What actually happened? And but I think there's a fine line as well. Michael talked about ruminating and being in your head a bit too much, and I experienced that as well. And there's a fine line between processing your thoughts and ruminating. So it's being mindful about that, and perhaps catching yourself if you start ruminating, and when you get into that sort of what's the word, repeated cycle, to get yourself out of it, perhaps through one of those techniques we were talking about that you can get out of your head through. Yeah, and physically, I loved what Ray was saying about bashing the wedding ring and giving a kid's newspaper. I think that's amazing because punching something or bashing a pillow or screaming and shouting in your car, if you're really angry, close all the windows, scream and shout, get it out. And yeah, so I basically agree with what everybody has said. And I think that's a really great list of ways to deal with stress. And that's probably all I wanted to say. So, what we might do is to go around and have some closing thoughts or, wrapping up thoughts because we've done very well and we're sticking to our time. So, we might just go around, have some closing thoughts, and yeah, wrap up our discussion for this evening. So, I'll hand it over to you, Ray.
Thanks, Anthea.
You're welcome.
I missed something. Yeah, computer game. All right, so I promised I'd tell you what I do now that has changed my life, that really works. On the track to getting there, I found a blog by a lady called Kathy Eck. She writes a free blog called Gateway to Gold, and another one called No Label, No Lies. And that changed my life because she talks about your thoughts, and most of them are actually lies. Most of them are not true. Most of them aren't yours. It's your auntie that told you you were a bit podgy when you were 6, so you've thought you're ugly your whole life. Millions and millions of thoughts. Society gives us all these thoughts that we have to get married. The only reason I got married is because I thought I had to. Thought I was supposed to do that. I wanted the child. I desperately wanted my son, but I thought the best thing for him would be to get married. So I did, and that was not a good idea, as it turned out, twice. Both times was not a good idea. So her stuff is wonderful. So Gateway to Gold, and she talks about your emotions. Actually, your body tells you whether something's true or not. So if something happens and you suddenly get angry, it's because you've triggered a thought that is actually false. So she goes right into that. Yeah, so your body's telling you all the time. You get sad, it's because you're thinking something that's not true. The truth is always calm. Even if something bad happens, if say, I don't know, someone that passes away, and that's very sad, but it's the truth. It's very different to hearing something that is a lie. Your body reacts very differently. Yeah. So that led me on the way. And the thing that I do now is, as other people have said, is meditation. But I mean proper meditation. Like Sanji's been teaching me solidly since March this year. So he makes me do 3 hours a day, honestly. And he keeps saying, you just keep doing it. Something wonderful will happen. And last week, something wonderful did. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it changed my perspective on anything. It's something you have to experience it for yourself, and it puts your everything into perspective. Yeah, that's all I can say, really. Yeah, so I'd be tempted to say making pottery like I do all day is reduces your stress. It doesn't. It's a barometer for how stressed you are. You can't make pottery unless you're centered and stress-free. Yeah, so that's probably why subconsciously I do it. But it's been like a journey my whole life to get to where I am. And I've only just, for all this time with Sanjva, with this proper meditation, because he has a whole, it's like scientific theory behind it all. There are 89 states of mind, or was it 128? A lot of states of mind in meditation, right? And all this time I've been on the ground trying to get to the first rung, and I've just got to the first rung. He said, "Oh, how wonderful. Now we can actually get somewhere." I was like, all these hours and it. But by jingoes, it's worth it. So I highly, highly recommend. It doesn't just teach you about yourself, it teaches you about everything, the life, the universe, and everything. So 42. 42 is on the first rung of the ladder. So I will leave it there. What do you reckon, George?
Couldn't go off mute. Yeah, I hear you there with meditation, yes. But yeah, I get I get stuff, but nothing, you know, um, just yeah. I don't know what to say. Um, with spinal flow, stress with spinal flow, and I find spinal flow is really, really good for my stress. Just I get 20 minutes a week with spinal flow, and it's just like, oh, amazing now. Where I used to have an hour 4 days a week, and it didn't even touch. Yeah, because I had the everything going on in my head, the emotions, my head, mm, yeah, my head would not stop, and it stopped that. Yeah, that and the meditate and everything else that I've done. Yeah. Um, there was something else I was going to say, and then I listened to all yous and I forget it. Um, oh, what I have learned, like with stress, is in the meditations and that, there is one thing I've learned, like that you can do for yourself is like um visualization is like fill your cup up like to like the visual under well what I do is I visualize under a waterfall, but it's hot, not cold at the moment. Um, and I just like I wash all the negative away and think of all the positive come in, and just anything that you want in, anything that or where you want to be, where you want to go or whatever. I think that I'm doing that. And that is one like yeah, to get me into well, out of my stress zone into, if I'm feeling negative as well. Yeah. So they call, I don't know, with the meditation, they call it fill your cup. Yeah, that's one thing. And with the spinal flow and the same pets. I have two little dogs and oh, like they're my best mates at the moment. And they really I just enjoy the alone time with them and talking to them. And yeah, I I've lost my train of thought what I was going to say. Um I had some Oh, and just I think I really think that it's important. I'll say again, like, set your boundaries. Um, and be with people who align and that you want to be with. You don't have to put up with anything else. Yeah. And you don't have to be rude about it or whatever. You just yeah, you can do it nicely. But it's important to have a few good friends and people who you can trust. And I think Anthony and Michael and Ray, you've all said that before too. But I feel that that is really important. And yeah, over to you, Michael.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to have those outlets. It's important not to isolate yourself too much, so to keep those connections going and the lines of communication open, and just having conversations with people that you trust, family and friends, and debriefing is all part of processing and dealing with stress, rather than simply, bottling it up and trying to pretend as if perhaps nothing is going on. So yeah, I think that's sage advice. I'm hoping that this maybe is a topic that, in the broad sense, we might be able to return to at some stage in the future and to continue to explore. I'm also hoping that the lovely Sanji will be with us next time to give us the benefit of his wisdom. But I think I'll maybe pass it back to Rae or Anthea. Who wants to sort of Anthea? I can see a hand there. I'll pass it over to you, Anthea. Yeah, just for some final reflections before we close.
Thank you, Michael. So basically, you've all said what I would have said. I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and I'm certainly welcome to come back to this topic because I think that it's very important, and perhaps in a period of time we'll have different things to add to it, and also our lovely Sanji to add his amazing perspective from his experience, his unique experience. So, having said that, I thank you all for your time and your effort and your love and your energy and care and attention, and for being the beautiful souls that you are. And I wish you a wonderful evening and a wonderful week ahead until the next time that we meet. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
for
you.
listening. Whoever is
Thank
listening,
you.
perhaps in the future.
We'll
Thank
see you
you.
next.
Thanks,
See you next
everyone.
week.
See you next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you. Bye.